Hey guys, welcome into another video. Today we're going to be heading over to basically a redraft is what we're going to be doing. I got my bro Hunter here. Hunter, we've done mock drafts in the past. We've taken 6 or 7 tries to get the mock draft done, and now we're here with a football redraft. We've done a couple of these in the past. I've done the 2019, 2018. Today we're going to be heading all the way back to the 2014 draft, one of the better draft classes probably in league history with how deep the talent is in this draft, but also one of the worst draft histories because of how many busts there were, especially in the first round. So what we're going to be doing here is me and him are going to be alternating. We have a bunch of players we think are going to get drafted. We got the teams here, and we're going to kind of just see how history unfolds in this new 2014 draft happening in 2020. So if you guys are new to the channel and you are part of the 99% of viewers that watch these videos and do not subscribe, make sure to hit that subscribe button as it helps me out as a channel to grow. And of course, it's going to help you get more NFL content along from me and of course Hunter when he comes on as well. And of course, if you are new, leave a like on the video as well because that's going to help me out a bunch as well. But Hunter, welcome back to the channel, and how are you feeling about this redraft?
Man, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. Thankful for being on here. Thanks for having me, man. I love it. I love doing all this stuff with you all the time. It's fun. I love doing all the redrafts and everything. It's always a blast. So happy to do it.
Of course, and then the biggest question we got here is I think there's kind of a consensus number 1 overall pick. So do you want to be the number 1 overall pick, or do you want to be the second overall pick? Because we're going to be alternating each pick. So you want to be the evens or the odds?
I think guest goes first, right?
All right, yeah, I agree. So with the number 1, so if you guys are familiar, 2014 draft is where Jadeveon Clowney went. This is also where the next 2 picks were Greg Robinson, Blake Bortles. That's kind of showing, hey, there's some good picks. There's also some really, really bad ones. So we're starting off here with the Houston Texans, and as Bill O'Brien, who are you picking?
I mean, if I was Bill O'Brien, I wouldn't take the player who I am going to take. But the player that I am going to take at number 1, it's clearly, obviously, not a shocker to anybody. It's going to be Aaron Donald of the now Los Angeles Rams, but of this draft of the Houston Texans. I mean, you've seen it over the span of his career. Nobody, or maybe a few players have been as dominant as Aaron Donald has been over the span that he's been in the NFL, and he's still in his prime. He's got so long to go, and I think he's going to be a great player for the rest of his career. Texans, if they would have taken him in this draft, would have been a complete change on the defensive line.
Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt on one D line.
Imagine.
And I think that was still was Mario Williams,
and that was there? A huge debate.
I think Mario Williams might still have been there in 2014. Looking back on it, I think he might have been there for like a year or 2 more. But like just to have that, I mean, I know Brian Cushing was still there. I mean, even then, you think like later on when they got Tyrann Mathieu, like how better that defense would be having a guy like Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt. I mean, looking at what Aaron Donald has done in his career, I mean, there's only been 2 years he didn't reach double-digit sacks, and it was his rookie year where he got 9 sacks, and then 2016 where he got 8 sacks. But, I mean, since then, he's had a season with 20.5 sacks. He had 12.5 this year. I mean, this guy has been an absolute beast. He's 117 TFLs in his career. I mean, there's no guy that has ever been able to, like, put up these numbers and, like, compare to him in our, like, current league right now. Like it's always who's the best defensive lineman, Aaron Donald. There's never like, oh, well, it's Aaron Donald no matter what. And for him to be in this draft class, for them to get him so low, it's crazy. I think another thing that's kind of funny too is like when he was coming out, I mean, he's 6'1", 280. Like you couldn't have predicted this guy to be the best defensive lineman in our current league.
You really couldn't have.
Like he beats to the Pro Bowl, but like 6'1", 280. I mean, this is a time where Vince Wilfork is still in the NFL. You know, like we have these, we have Haloti Nadas. You know, we have these big fat guys, and then you got a guy coming in at 6'1", 280, just wrecking huge ass offensive linemen. I mean, it was a crazy thing, but I mean, since then, 6-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All Pro, Defensive Rookie of the Year. He won 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards. I mean, the only problem with this pick is he going to get number 99, you know? Because J.J. Watt's got that. Like, that's the only problem you could ever have with this pick.
Yeah. You can't go wrong. Aaron Donald, the obvious pick.
Yeah, and then it's a little bit harder for me because now the next pick is the, at the time, St. Louis Rams, but this is the Los Angeles Rams. They had 2 first-round picks in this draft. They have 13, so Hunter's going to end up getting their second pick, and so his pick kind of depends on what I do here. But when you look at where the Rams were, this is when they took Greg Robinson. Offensive tackle was a huge need. Now, when you look at the draft, offensive tackle, there's some good ones, but if I were to pick one, it'd probably be like Taylor Lewan. I think he'd be the best one. But at this moment in time, I don't think there's a need for a Taylor Lewan. But this was also the same time where their offense wasn't what it is now. It was a Tavon Austin offense. They had Trey Mason that they got later in this draft class. They didn't have a Gurley yet. Gurley was the next year. I mean, this is a team that needs some sort of spark off the jump, off of this draft. And because they're not getting Greg Robinson, as much as offensive tackle is a need, and now they don't have Aaron Donald, that's a big need as well. I'm still not going offense. It's got to be Khalil Mack. We're not going to be idiots here. Khalil Mack is the next best player in the draft. If you're not getting Aaron Donald, you still need that defensive presence, because if there is anything that could save this Rams team and still get them to that Super Bowl 2 years prior to, obviously, 2020, it's going to be still having somebody as dominant as Aaron Donald. Now, obviously, they don't play the same exact position as, Donald's more of a linebacker edge hybrid and Donald's more of a D-tackle D-end hybrid. But to have another guy who's a home wrecker like that, I mean, that's just somebody that you really can't pass up on. I think that there was other opportunities for players there because their offense was so poor. But when you look at what they got, I think it's just – I mean, this guy is, 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in 2016. I mean, I think people forget how beast of a player Khalil Mack was before the Bears. I mean, he's still easily top 3 at his position right now. But when he was on the Raiders, I mean, this guy was a different animal. And then when he went to the Bears, those first 4 or 5 games that he was on the Bears, I mean, there's like a strip sack in every game, I think was like the stat line that he had.
It was insane.
Dude is absolutely nuts. I mean, he has 61.5 sacks in his career. He spent those 4 years in Oakland. I mean, dude, he was second season in the league. He had 15 sacks. I mean, the guy is just an absolute beast. You're not getting Aaron Donald in this draft, St. Louis and Los Angeles Rams fans, so you're going to get the next best thing, and that's going to be Khalil Mack. And you still have another pick to look forward to. So I feel like Rams fans will be happy with a redraft here because they're not getting Greg Robinson's ass, and that's a big plus for them. Because it's one of those things where when you draft a guy second overall, I mean, the Giants did this with Eric Flowers. When you draft a guy so high, no matter if he sucks or not, you're going to stick him there for 3 years because you wasted his capital. You need to, milk every ounce of crap out of him.
Potential.
Yeah. It's just like maybe this year, maybe this year he won't make Sam Bradford get injured, So, I think it's a big plus to go from Greg Robinson to Khalil Mack here.
Yeah. Awesome. So with the third pick overall in the 2014 draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars did have the pick this year, and that year they did take the infamous Blake Bortles. We all love that Blake Bortles fan account.
Had a couple good years.
Hey, Tom Brady has 6 rings, right? Blake Bortles contributed.
Exactly.
They have 6 combined. So Blake Bortles obviously in the redraft world would not be the pick here. But I still feel at the time quarterback was their biggest need. And it does seem like a little bit of a stretch here, but at the number 3 overall pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I am going to go ahead and take Jimmy Garoppolo.
I once you started going down the QB route, I kind of figured that you might go here. And first of all, I love my computer because I've typed Garoppolo so much that it just has it as like the little shortcut on the little touch bar because no one knows how to spell this dude's name. But here's the thing. Is it crazy to say Jimmy Garoppolo is the 3rd overall pick when you got Mike Evans and Odell and all these people on the board? Yes.
I really don't think it is.
That's the thing. It's crazy, the difference. But when you look at it, I mean, Jimmy G has been an absolute monster when he's healthy. He's been a solid quarterback. There's nothing wrong with him. He's done nothing to hurt his team. There's the arguments of, how much is he doing? That run game is insane. That Shanahan offense is insane. And while I agree, I think Shanahan's one of the best coaches we have in the NFL. I mean, this guy is and has been a very good quarterback. I mean, he didn't even lose a game until his full year as a starter. He was undefeated with the Patriots. He got a ring sitting behind Brady. He goes to the 49ers, went 5-0 to end the season, and then proceeded to get 26 mil off of 5 games. I mean, we've never seen something like this guy. So for the Jags to get Jimmy G, I think that not only will he do what Blake Bortles did, but I think he'll do even more throughout the years. They won't have to replace him.
And I know that there's going to be a lot of people out there who's saying, oh, Jimmy G was only good because he sat behind Tom Brady and the Bill Bill Belichick and Tom Brady offense for years and years before he got traded to a 49ers team that was already solid, right? It had the
Yeah.
essentials of being a good team. All it needed was a few extra pieces.
Mm-hmm.
They went and got an excellent GM. They went and got Shanahan. They went and got Garoppolo, and they made the team really good. And I think that personally, Jimmy Garoppolo was so raw as a player coming out of college by himself that I don't think he needed that. It definitely helped. Don't get me wrong. It definitely helped sitting behind Tom Brady and sitting in the Bill Belichick offense and everything. But I think he would have been successful no matter what offense he went to, just because of the play style that he has.
Yeah, I mean, you can't knock that Jimmy G is 21-5 as a starter. You know,
you can't.
Like, that is, and 3 of those losses were this year. You know, when they went 13-3, we're acting like this guy. Like, and I get it. Sitting behind Brady, I get it. It helps. But when you look at what this guy does, I mean, he wins. He simply wins.
Winner. He's got winner on him.
Obviously, he was a backup, but it was 2 Super Bowls he got there. He's 21-5 as a starter, which is a great number to have. 67.5% completion percentage. I mean, he's got 44 touchdowns and 21 picks. So, I mean, 2-to-1 ratio is a little bit, it's a little bit, I'd rather it be like a 3-to-1 ratio, but it's not losing them games. That's as simple as that, man. And you can't knock the guy. I mean, his 5 losses have been these past 2 seasons with the Niners where he's a full-time starter. And this is when he's 27 years old. I mean, this is a guy who you can even look at the Brady years and be like, hey, that hindered his time that he could be doing, because now he's a full-time starter at age 27. He wasted those first 6 years. He's basically getting the Brandon Weeden treatment. He's kind of becoming a starter at 27 years old. So imagine this guy when he came out at 23 years old being a starter right away for a Jaguars team. That first year might have been a little tough, but then after that, smooth sailing. And I think the Jags wouldn't be in that position now. It's the tank for Trevor Lawrence scenario here, kind of giving up on my boy Gardner. But, I mean, I understand the pick. I love the pick. I think there's nothing wrong with it at all. The next pick that we do have is Buffalo. And this is where Buffalo took Sammy Watkins. Now, it was a great pick at the time. Sammy Watkins was easily the greatest thing in college football. I mean, he's like 6'3", runs a sub 4.4. I mean, was a beast at Clemson.
He was sliced bread before sliced bread was. I'm saying,
Clemson's receivers have just been insane for such a. I mean, right after he left, DeAndre Hopkins comes the next year. I mean, it's such a crazy thing, but unfortunately, just due to what Sammy Watkins has done in his career, his accolades and what he's done, it just can't hold up to this pick. But that doesn't mean we're going to shy away from receiver. And there's a couple that you take, but I still think that the talent for this guy outweighs what the other one has done. And that's going to be Odell Beckham Jr. going all the way up. He's going to stay in New York. He's not going to lead that. But he is going to follow all the way up to the 4th pick. It's pretty much him and Mike Evans, I think, as the top 2 receivers on the board. And I think that even though Mike Evans right now is a better player, in my opinion, at this moment in time, just simply for Odell's just, situational and everything, Odell was arguably the best receiver for a good 3 or 4 years in the NFL from 2015 till, last year. And I don't even think I remember having debates all throughout high school and everything with you and with our friend group. Who's the best receiver? Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, or Odell Beckham? I know you're a Julio fan. I was a big Odell fan because I'm a Giants fan. We had our friend who was a Steelers fan. And those arguments would get heated because there really was no wrong answer. But that's how good Odell was and still is. He is arguably the greatest catch of all time. He has the greatest hands probably of all time. And this is a guy who transcended how the NFL is played at the receiver position. And for the Bills to get that when they wanted Sammy Watkins, because, Sammy Watkins had a good year or two in Buffalo. I mean, we can't forget that. And obviously now with the Chiefs, he's done a lot better. He's a Super Bowl champion. So that's good. But, I mean, you can't knock what Odell Beckham has done, man. 3-time Pro Bowler. He was the Offensive Rookie of the Year that year in 2014. I mean, even last year, in probably his worst year as a player, a fully healthy player, he still had 1,000 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's his rookie season. He had 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns.
Insane.
In his rookie season. And mind you, this is with Eli Manning. Eli Manning at his old age. This obviously they made the playoffs the next year or 2 years later. But his first 3 years, his rookie season, that 1,305 yards was his lowest yardage in those first 3 years until he got injured in 2017. I mean, this guy 12 touchdowns first year, 13 touchdowns his second year, 10 touchdowns his third year. I mean, this is a guy who is just an absolute playmaker. He's a beast of the position. I think that this is just an easy pick for them to make. Tyrod Taylor might be a starter for a little bit longer. Maybe Fitzmagic gets some more time in Buffalo with him. I mean, there's a lot of different things here, but I really think Odell coming out now looking at it would be an easy pick here for the Bills.
And I mean, you're not wrong. Speaking of easy picks, though, going in at pick number 5, you look on the board. The Raiders had the pick at number 5, and when you looked at who they picked in this draft, they did actually draft. I can't remember who they drafted.
Khalil Mack.
It was Khalil Mack. I totally forgot.
They nailed it.
So,
They're getting worse no matter what happens here.
They nailed it. I'm just so they got Khalil Mack, obvious home run, excellent pick. If you could go back in time, they would redo the exact same pick 100 times out of 100.
They trade up,
but
they trade up to make sure that pick is going to have again.
Yeah. But in this draft, obviously Khalil Mack is taken, so he can't go here to the Raiders. But that doesn't mean they shy away from linebacker. I actually think they take the number 2 linebacker on the board, who goes all the way up from pick number 17, and I think that's C.J. Mosley of the Baltimore Ravens. I think C.J. Mosley goes here at number 5 to the Raiders. The Raiders have always liked to be a little out there with their picks, right? And C.J. Mosley fits the description of every single player that they've ever drafted of ever to exist. And then you look at his accolades that he has on top of it, it's just unmatched. Since he's been drafted, 4-time Pro Bowler, 4-time second-team All-Pro. I mean, even in college, he was a dominant force. Obviously, he's on the Ravens doing all this, but I think if the Raiders would have drafted him, I think he still would have had the exact same stat line today, no matter what team.
Rookie, he was a Pro Bowler his rookie year, and then
he was a stud.
Yeah, and then he missed it. He missed it after that, the second year, and then Pro Bowl the next 3 years. Then obviously
because he got hurt, right? Didn't he get hurt his sophomore year? He missed a couple games, I thought.
No, his sophomore year he played 16 games. He still had an amazing season. Like he had 117 total tackles with 13 TFLs, and 4 sacks. I guess he missed it out. His third year when he made the Pro Bowl again, he played 14 games, but he
still dominant.
Yeah, and he still ended up making. I mean, here's the thing. It might seem like an unpopular pick. I'm a huge C.J. Mosley guy. I can't wait to see him actually healthy with the Jets because that's gonna make me it's gonna be more fun to watch the Jets because Mosley is actually out there. He only played 2 games for them last year, but like you said, this guy was a sneaky dominant player. I mean, especially for a team that was kind of in this weird transition period. You know, the Ray Lewis years are done. You know, you're letting go Cheese Sizzle soon. You know, he's obviously on his way out. Ed Reed's already gone. You know, this is a weird Flacco's getting up there in age, and this is a team that, you know, propelled them to not only keep performing, but keep performing at a high level. I mean, they went to some championship games with this guy. So
yeah.
Here's the thing, off the top, whoa! It looks like you're jumping off the top rope, you know, giving somebody the tombstone power driver, but like it's not a bad pick. Especially
it's not a bad pick when you look at it, unless you're comparing it to Anthony Barr. Then it's very close at that point. I mean, they're so similar. They're both 4-time Pro Bowlers.
Yeah,
right?
I think the reason I would give Mosley the edge, 1 is consistency, but 2, the Raiders really have struggled at linebacker for a little while. Like, Khalil Mack is obviously a beast, but he's more of an edge rusher. But when you think about, they've literally plugged and played every linebacker at the middle linebacker position, and just nothing has stuck. If they had a guy like C.J. Mosley on their team right now, once again, you never know what would happen with the teams. Who would stay, who would go? Because obviously there's a big mess with the Raiders these past few years. So I can't even argue with the pick and say that's a bad pick. Like, you made it perfectly. Raiders are known for making some weird picks.
Yeah, they really are.
With no Khalil Mack on the board, why not go after the best linebacker on the board? And that, I think, without a doubt, is C.J. Mosley. Now, then we get over to the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this is a weird one because I think this is the year that Matt Ryan won MVP, if I'm not mistaken. I think 2014 was the year he won MVP. And if that is the case, then that means that this guy that was taken here, Jake Matthews, is a huge, huge part of the reason why he did that. I'm trying to see when his MVP season was. I think it's 2014.
2016.
Oh, it was 2016? Okay, so it's 2 years down the line. Who was 2014? Was it Cam? Or is that too early for Cam? I think it's too early for Cam. I don't even
Was it?
remember. I think Cam
It's
Newton
so long
was.
ago. It
I
was
think
Aaron Rodgers.
in 2014. Oh, that's the year. Did they win that year?
Did they?
Man, I'm getting years. It's so crazy because it seems like 2014 was like yesterday, and now it's like,
No. In 2014, the Seahawks won 43-8
oh,
against the
that was the
Broncos.
Broncos, dude. Oh, that
Yeah.
was the. I shut that Super Bowl off after the first quarter. It was like 28-3. It's like, come on, dog. But
So many weird Super
so
Bowls,
this is
man.
where we're at a weird thing because the Falcons here, they have a need at offensive line. They're a couple years away from competing, and there's a bunch of things they can do here.
And arguably took the best one on the board. I mean,
It's arguable. I think that there's a better offensive tackle. I think Taylor Lewan is the best tackle. I mean, he's arguably one of the best ones in the league right now. Matthews is just consistently a very good player. Oh, man, I'm just trying to think of who else I could put here. Right now, Lewan is where I think I'm going.
Taylor Lewan.
Let's just look at the roster. So 2014, according to Pro Football Reference, they had Matt Ryan at quarterback. This is when they had Steven Jackson at running back at 31 years old. This is the year they got Devontae Freeman later as well. Julio Jones and Roddy White, Levine Toilolo. Pretty bad offensive line. Defensive line's nothing to write. Defense is not much to write home about. So that kind of assures who I'm going to pick here. Falcons got a pretty bad defense at this moment in time in this draft. Now, we've already seen Aaron Donald go off the board. We've already seen Khalil Mack go off the board. We've already seen C.J. Mosley go off the board, but that does not leave the number 1 overall pick in Jadeveon Clowney. He's still on the board, and he's falling all the way down to pick 6. But I think this is a guy who is getting a lot of bad press right now, just simply for holding out, not getting a team yet, wanting his money. But when you look at it, when he's on the field, man, he's worth every cent of what he wants. He is that good. I mean, everyone knows his clip of in college just bursting through the line and absolutely massacring that running back. But no, the thing is when healthy, and I get health is a factor, right? He is bar none top 5 at the edge rusher position, in my opinion. I think he's that good. He's that good because he's that rare combination of running like a 4.5 while also being a gigantic ass human being. So I think that if the Falcons were able to redo it, as much as offensive line is a big need here, I think that there's better. I think there's better down the line. And I'm starting to regret it because there's somebody else I think should go here. But, oh, man. I think I already said Jadeveon Clowney. I can't take it back. I'm giving him to Jadeveon Clowney. There is somebody else and if the comment section is yelling at me because he's still on the board, you already know who it is, okay? But I get it. He'll be coming off the board soon. Don't get mistaken.
Am I mistaken? No, I actually do know exactly who you're talking about. At the 7th overall pick, it was actually the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and in that draft, they actually did take Mike Evans, a home run pick.
Mm-hmm.
The number 2, excuse me. We all forget about Sammy Watkins, or at least we all try to forget about it. He was the number 2 receiver taken that year, and he is solid. He's been solid every year. We think about it, 3-time Pro Bowler, second-team All-Pro once. He's gotten over 1,000 yards receiving almost every year, if not every year, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I'm pretty sure.
I think it's been every year he's been over 1,000 yards.
Yeah, it's just been a weird career for him because of the quarterback situation and just the team itself. But
yeah, but
his production's always there.
With the number 7 pick, I actually am going to go ahead and stick with the wide receiver position here. I know it seems like I'm doing that lately, I know the comment section is going to roast me because there is a better player that is on the board that should go here. But I feel at this time Tampa Bay needed a receiver. They were obviously needing one after all of their older vets were getting older. They needed a new change of scenery. So I'm going to stick with Mike Evans here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Like I said, I think there's nothing wrong with the pick. There's other receivers that possibly could go here. But I think what Mike Evans, coming off of the Johnny football season, he was very highly touted because of that, the national exposure he got. And then just being as big of a human being as he is at the receiver position and still being able to run routes and stuff.
An absolute behemoth.
Yeah, I think they nailed it. And I think that they're lucky to still have him here because obviously he's a high talent. But like we said, this is one of the best draft classes, in
Ever?
history, to be honest. Yeah, I mean,
Ever.
this is a fun class. It's filled with a bunch of different different spots that like it's like, oh, like, you know, although we have Khalil Mack and Aaron Donald and Odell, we also have Blake Bortles and Greg Robinson. You know, so it's a very separate thing.
I feel like this draft class was so diverse in how many excellent players per position there were. So it's not like you can really go wrong if you're trying to do a redraft, because no matter what, every single position could possibly make sense.
100%.
You know what I mean?
So this next pick is easy for me. This is where the Cleveland Browns took Justin Gilbert out of Oklahoma State, who, you know, looked good at the time, just did not work out. They ended up taking Johnny Football with their later pick too, so their first round was not good. But in the second round is when they took a guy, Joel Bitonio, who we know now as one of the better offensive linemen in the league. He's been very consistent for a long time. But the guy who the Falcons ended up passing on in this redraft for Jadeveon Clowney, for the upside of Clowney, to help out that defense, that's going to be a benefit for Cleveland, because Cleveland, you got yourself an offensive guard in Zach Martin.
Yep. I knew it.
This guy has been one of the best players at the position we've ever seen for so long. Obviously, offensive line, I think, is a team position. Will Zach Martin flourish being on this line? Well, I mean, being on the same line as Joe Thomas, probably, if I had to be honest with you. Who knows what that impact Zach Martin can do with this scenario? I mean, does Johnny Football have a better career? Does somebody else have a better career? There's so many different things. Maybe RG3 revives his career when he was the starter for the Browns. There's so many different scenarios. But I think with the uncertainty of Bitonio right now, because right now at this moment they don't have Bitonio. John Greco was, you know, he was decent, but also he's on his way out of Cleveland. You need an offensive lineman. There's the best one on the board. I think that he arguably should have went earlier, but with him still being on the board at 8, I got to take Zach Martin.
Yeah, Zach Martin should have went earlier, but based off of team need, I feel like it's okay where he went.
Yeah, because I was with the Falcons. Even though Zach Martin is an absolute monster, they went tackle for a reason. They needed to protect Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
So if they weren't going tackle, I think Clowney would be the better pick. But it's still either way would go. But pick 9, we have the Minnesota Vikings here, and that's all you, Hunter. What are we thinking?
Yeah. So the 9th overall pick, like you said, was the Minnesota Vikings. And in that draft, they actually did take Anthony Barr, which, I mean, solid player. Again, like I said earlier, him and CJ Mosley are essentially the same player. I mean, you really couldn't tell the difference. They both have the same accolades. They've both done the same amount of excellent stuff throughout their career. With this pick here, I know it seems like I'm constantly doing it, but Anthony Barr is actually going to still be the pick here. Anthony Barr has proven that he is a great player, and I think he still will be for the rest of his career. Minnesota Vikings love Anthony Barr. If you watch all the YouTube videos that they post, clearly he's loved in the locker room.
Yeah.
I think that there's no wrong with this pick and taking Anthony Barr in the redraft.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at what he's done throughout his career, I mean, barring the 2019 season, which was absolutely atrocious, I mean, he's been consistent. He's been consistent. I mean, over 70 tackles each time. I mean, TFLs. But the thing is that he's one of those guys where his impact isn't always felt in the stat department. It's really shown just disrupting a play, because his speed off the edge is so insane that he will force a running back, like a small running back, you know, like a Darren Sproles who needs to bounce outside. He forces them inside to where you have those bigger guys, those Linval Josephs, those Everson Griffins, to hit them and get the ball back or get tackles for losses. So he's able to make such a big impact. And I mean, even if, let's say, Anthony Barr's career falls off, I mean, getting 5 years out of this guy, or 6 years out of this guy almost, of just very solid production is a thing. I mean, he got paid big for a reason. I mean, the Jets wanted to pay him. The Jets wanted to pay him as much as they were paying Mosley, and he ended up taking that offer and taking it to the Vikings to stay with them. But, you know, you can't really hate the team for sticking with them here. And, you know, Vikings fans, hey, you're going to have to watch Josh Allen hurdle him you're still going to have to see that. That's still going to happen. But, you know, he's still one of the best linebackers we have in the league, pound for pound. So I don't disagree with the pick.
I am not upset with that pick at all. I love it myself.
All right, then we go over to pick 10 here, where the Detroit Lions ended up taking Eric Ebron. And while if you look at his first year with the Colts, it wouldn't look like this was such a bad pick. But where you look at him now, where, you know, he only got, like, I think $6 million a year with the Steelers right now. He had a horrible time in Detroit, just never fit in. I mean, this is not a guy who can stay at this pick could be a Pro Bowler or Pro Bowler. Could be a Pro Bowler somewhere else. Could be a starter somewhere else. Maybe even falls into the first round for this draft. But I think that where the Lions were at this point in time, just was a weird time. And they ended up going 11-5 this season. But this was just a hard time for the team, just because you have Calvin Johnson ending up retiring a few years down the line, which was unprecedented. You look at what you had. I mean, Reggie Bush was their starting running back this season. Offensive line was pretty solid. Defense was pretty solid. But, this team overall has struggled a lot. They had the Ndamukong Suh years where he was great, but also he was getting in trouble. Couple years before this, they were 0-16. So it's like this is a very bad time to be a Lions fan, but it started to look up around this point. So if they were able to hit on somebody in this draft instead of Eric Ebron, I think this would be huge for them. So one thing I noticed about their team right away is the defense definitely could get better. I think one part about that would be in the secondary. And this draft had a good amount of secondary players, but I think that if there was one to end up going this high, that could make an immediate impact for them, even though overall talent-wise, there's better players above him. I'm going to give him Kyle Fuller here. Because when you look at where they're at, they had Rasheed Mathis being the number 2, who in that season had 1 interception, which isn't horrible, but getting a guy like Kyle Fuller to at least even be the nickel in this defense, it would help him out a lot. This is when Glover Quinn was at the top of his game. He had 7 picks this year. Darius Slay was still there, obviously 23 years old. So to have Darius Slay and Kyle Fuller progressing at pretty much the same age throughout these years, you would still have them to this day, most likely, both of them, which would be really good. They could do a couple of different things. Ndamukong Suh is there. They could add to that with him, Ziggy Ansah, maybe add somebody else to that. They could go for an offensive lineman. Obviously, we know that Bitonio's still on the board, Lawan's still on the board. But overall, I think that even then, Calvin Johnson, Golden Tate, they're good enough right there. They're very solid. They both made the Pro Bowler. They were both Pro Bowlers that year. I think that the best way to do it is help that secondary out, get them just a little bit better, and see what they can do in the playoffs with that team.
Yeah, I agree. With the 11th pick here, the Tennessee Titans in the 2014 draft, they actually did take Taylor Lewan. Solid pick, obviously. Go ahead.
No, I'd say it's gonna be ironic as hell if for the past 4 picks you end up taking the same guy that they took, because it's falling like the right way.
It's not even my fault. Like, everybody's gonna think that this is just like I'm doing this on purpose, but I'm really not. When you look at who is around and you look at the rest of the players that are still left in this redraft, it just so happens that the team took the right player because there's so many good players in this draft. But with the 11th overall pick, the Tennessee Titans, again in the redraft, like the past couple other picks, are going to take Taylor Lewan, obvious game changer player.
Got paid like it too last offseason.
Yep.
Also one of the most entertaining dudes you could ever find.
He's funny when he's got the mustache and
he's got the mustache, busting on the boys. He's always energetic and the great locker room guy. This was a bad time just to be a Titans fan. Obviously, this is when Ken Wisenhunt was the coach. They ended up going 2-14 this year. Ken Wisenhunt years were pretty bad for them. This is also when they had – if you were one of those new viewers to the NFL, maybe a couple years ago, or maybe even you're just kind of like in your teens or something like that, you might not remember this team. But this team freaking sucked, man. Zach Mettenberger was their starting quarterback. They had Bishop Sankey as the running back. Their receiving core was Justin Hunter, Nate Washington, and Kendall Wright. Other than that, their offensive line was pretty good. Michael Orr and Taylor Lewan. They had Chance Warmack at guard. They had Delaney Walker at tight end. There was good things. On the defense, only names you guys might know if you did not know this team is probably Jason McCourty, Avery Williamson, and Wesley Woodyard, and Derek Morgan, and Jarrell Casey. Other than that, people might forget who Michael Griffin was because he was good for his time, but he's forgettable. You got Ray Wilson, who isn't really in the NFL anymore. You got, Pita Tua, I think is how you pronounce his name, or the defensive end. It's like this team was very bad, and it's a long way out. But if they get Taylor Lewan, they keep Taylor Lewan, hey, they're still going to be doing what they're doing right now to this day. So it hurts now, but it's going to get better. That's pretty much what the Taylor Lewan pick does. So now this is where it gets weird because the New York Giants took Odell Beckham here. And
which you loved.
I did love, and I will never act like Odell Beckham wasn't the most fun player to watch when he was on the Giants. I mean, the Giants were just such a better team with Odell Beckham on the field. Problem is that he wasn't always on the field towards his later days. Then the attitude problems and stuff like that. This is also when Tom Coughlin was still the coach. I love me some Tommy C. Obviously, he's not the best front office exec, but as a coach, awesome coach. We ended up going 6-10 this year, so it wasn't a horrible year, it wasn't a great year. But like we said, this is towards the end of the Eli years. There's just a lot of holes to fill. Rashad Jennings is 29 years old. Ruben Randall and Odell Beckham were the two young receivers that were doing it. Larry Donnell is the tight end. Offensive line pretty much needs help all around the board. Defensively was a pretty set team. DRC, Amukamara, Antrell Roll, Quentin Demps in the secondary, Jason Pierre-Paul, Jonathan Hankins, Matthias Kiwanuka. I mean, this is a good, solid team. And this is only 3 years removed from a Super Bowl. So this isn't a much, worse team than what it was prior. But I think that this team could definitely use some help. That's why they ended up going with a guy like Odell Beckham here. But just looking at players who are still on the board that could help this team, I mean, there's one player that's coming to mind, and I'm going to see if I'm not going to take him. It's going to be hard not to, but I'm going to see if I can convince myself not to because it just seems like the easiest pick. But I think that you fall out, you don't get Odell Beckham, you're going to have to take the next best thing. And I think that even though, tight end was a need, Daniel Fells isn't a starting tight end. He got 188 yards. Offensive line was a big problem for the past however many years. Maybe I could get ahead of it by taking a Jake Matthews or a Batonia or something. But nonetheless, I'm going to end up taking none other than Davante Adams.
I knew it.
This guy is now one of the best receivers when healthy as well. Obviously, he blossomed because he was sitting behind Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, getting catches from Aaron Rodgers. Will he have the same impact as Odell? No, not even close. Odell came out and was able to make plays based on what his performance could do compared to what his quarterback would do. It took Davante Adams a couple of years, but, I mean, Davante Adams is one of the most polished route runners we've seen in today's day and age. He pretty much can catch the ball anywhere that you throw it to him. I love his game. I think that with Ruben Randall there, I think you need to help that team out. Obviously, there's a lot of positions that need to be filled because we know what happened to the Giants after this, but I think Davante Adams would be good because then when you go later on down the line, they still are going to get Sterling Shepard to help out. Even to today's day and age, if Davante Adams was still on the team, most likely compared to getting traded for Odell, I'd still be happy. I'd be a very happy man. Daniel Jones throwing to Davante Adams, Sterling Shepard. I think it's a lot better of a situation than what we have here. But I love the Davante Adams pick. It's not Odell, but hey, maybe he's got more security because he's definitely more of a calmer head in the NFL.
Yeah, I love that pick. This pick here, we are actually going on to pick number 13, where the St. Louis Rams, they took Aaron Donald. Perfect pick. Obviously, it was the number one pick in the redraft. So you can't take Aaron Donald here. And there really weren't any good defensive tackles when you look on the board of defensive tackles that were taken in this draft that are worth or noting, even first round.
Yeah.
So,
and you got to remember, too, they now have Khalil Mack in this draft, too.
They do have Khalil Mack in this redraft. So because they already went with the defensive side, I'm actually going to go ahead and go with the offensive side here. And
okay.
You thought you had a big jump. No, sir, you did not have a big jump. Going from pick number 92 from the Carolina Panthers to the Rams at pick number 13, I'm going to go with Trey Turner.
Okay.
Guard. When you look at who the Rams had for their guards position in 2014, they had Roger Saffold and Barrett Jones. I mean, not good. Their offensive line was not good back then.
It took Roger Saffold a while to get better, and that was more or less with the Whitworth accusations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, their line was not the best, and having a guy like Trey Turner at that pick, huge jump. No one saw it coming out of college, but I mean, 5-time Pro Bowler, stats don't lie. He's been solid. Chalk it in.
Yeah, and I think a thing with it too is that offensive linemen are very expendable when they get to the league. Maybe Trey Turner goes and takes over that Greg Robinson role and plays tackles for them, and hopefully he does well in that department. I mean, offensive line is definitely a big need. So coming out of it, I mean, if I was a Rams fan, I'd be happier with Khalil Mack, Trey Turner than I was Greg Robinson, Aaron Donald. And it's hard to say because, like, damn, I'm not – you should be happy with Aaron Donald. No, obviously, but that Greg Robinson pick just hurt too damn much. Then we go over to the Chicago Bears here at pick 14. This is where they ended up taking Kyle Fuller, who went a little bit earlier, not too much, just 4 picks earlier, but they definitely have a lot of needs. Let's get that started off. The Bears have been in a kind of purgatory to where they have not been able to do much. This is Mark Trestman's coaching years, where they went 5-11, fourth in the division. And the other thing we got to think of is this division is one of the toughest divisions in football. I mean, the Bears, the Vikings, the Packers, this is a crazy division. You're always going to be competing. So what can you do to help that? Well, at this point in time, nothing on the offensive side. Maybe go for a quarterback as Cutler's on his way out, but you have Matt Forte, who's an absolute beast. You had Alshon and Brandon Marshall with Josh Morgan as well, both all very good players. Martellus Bennett was a Pro Bowler at this stage in his career. So I think that really the impact you're going to need is from that defensive side. They did end up going corner and getting Kyle Fuller, who was a starter right away. But they're really not going to be able to get that from this draft, So when you look at what's left available, not really too much in the corner department, not at least this high in my opinion. I think they have to go with somebody at the linebacker or defensive end position, and I think that's what I'm going to have them do. Obviously, they have Jared Allen, they have Lamar Houston, but these guys, Jared Allen's 32, Lamar Houston's 27. They were both pretty much on their last legs. I think it's time to get somebody that you can rotate in and out, and that's going to be DeMarcus Lawrence, who ended up going to the Cowboys in this draft. The reason I have DeMarcus Lawrence here is, like I said, when you have guys that are aging, when you look at this Bears team, the offense is great, but they knew that they weren't a team that was going to be able to go win a Super Bowl this year. So getting a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence, it creates time for him to learn behind guys like Lamar Houston, Jared Allen, Lance Briggs, guys that are going to help him in his development to where he can still become the guy who he is today, making the money he is today, and be able to help you out throughout the years to where you wouldn't have to trade for a Khalil Mack later down the line, who obviously is in a different situation, but you wouldn't have to figure out, okay, how can we help our edge because it's not doing so well. DeMarcus Lawrence would fill that in any shape or form with his pass rushing ability. So chalk in DeMarcus Lawrence. They lose out on Kyle Fuller, but, hey, they get the next best available player at the defensive spot.
Yeah, I really, really like that pick. And with the number 15 pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers, at the time, they did take Ryan Shazier. Now, we all know what happened with Ryan Shazier. Obviously, it's not a good thing. Obviously, rehab's been going good. Have you seen anything that he's been posting on Twitter? He's super positive
I've seen some. Yeah, he's always been really positive. I mean, I pray for his own safety that he never touches the NFL field again in pads, but I know he wants to. So, I mean, it's kind of like the Alex Smith thing, where it's like, I'd love to see you get back out there because it's a good story, but, like, please don't,
I agree. But with I don't know, man. There's so many players that I want to take.
Yeah, let's look at where the team was at this point in time.
Man.
Because that's one of the biggest things. So in 24, I mean, we got to remember, Steelers – there's nothing you can do wrong here with the Steelers. They ended up getting Stephon Tuitt down the line. Maybe he makes a jump and still goes to them here. But they still went 11-5 in this year. They weren't a bad team. I mean, this is still the team that had Ben Roethlisberger, that had Le'Veon Bell, that had Antonio Brown. Heath Miller was still there at this time. Offensive line is near flawless,
Yeah.
They could use some help behind him at receiver, but they had Martavis Bryant they got later in the draft, so he would help out. Other than that, I mean, they still have Lawrence Timmons, Will Gay, Troy Polamalu, Mike Mitchell, Cam Hayward.
You took the words out of my mouth, man. I mean, they did go defense in this draft, but for me, just like I did with my last pick, I'm actually gonna turn the tables, and I'm actually gonna switch it from the defensive side. I'm actually gonna go to the offensive side, and again, I'm actually gonna have a pretty high jump here.
I hope I know who you're picking, because I really like the pick. If you do,
I think you do, and we both like this guy. He has proven time and time again he's a solid player. And with this pick here, I'm actually going to go ahead and do Jarvis Landry.
That's what I thought. I could not even imagine Jarvis and Antonio Brown with Le'Veon Bell. That team.
Obviously, they already had Antonio Brown and they had Le'Veon Bell. They were going in the first round of fantasy drafts across the board, no matter what, book it, right?
Yeah.
They had a solid offense, probably the number one offense in the league. But then you look at it and you go ahead and add a player like Jarvis Landry. I mean, yeah, they had great receivers, like solid receivers, but none that could really stay on the field. You know, you
Yeah,
had
their starter
the
was Marcus
alien.
Wheaton this year.
I know. They also had a ton of players that could just never stay on the field. So getting a player like Jarvis Landry at this pick, I think is a lock-in pick.
Yeah, and then it's kind of that thing where it's like this is an alternate universe. If they get Jarvis Landry and Antonio Brown, who both were very much about being the best at their position, then you have a guy Martavis Bryant being your number 3 who had trouble outside. Hey, if there's 2 people that could probably whip him around and make sure that he is, hey, you are going to be the best receiver you can be. You're not going to be messing around outside of work. This is your job. It's going to be Jarvis Landry. It was going to be Antonio Brown at this time. Obviously, not current day Antonio Brown.
Bless
but
him, my boy. Bless him.
I mean,
bless him.
Big Ben, Le'Veon, Antonio, Jarvis, and Martavis in 2014, 2015. I mean, that would be an absolute nuts pick to have.
Insane.
So I'd see that team easily going on to do some damage. Then we have the Dallas Cowboys here at pick 16. Now, in the actual draft, the Dallas Cowboys ended up taking Zach Martin, which was the best pick they could have ever taken in franchise history. I mean, at pick 16, that's a crazy pick for them. Obviously, they're not getting that here. Here's the thing, and it's going to be a little unpopular here. I'm not going to go offensive line again. I think it's simply for the fact that Cowboys don't have a problem making offensive linemen the best that they can be. So if they had to take offensive linemen later on in the draft, or if they go into next year take offensive line, in this setting, they'll still be good because no matter who they put in those 5 positions at offensive line, they end up being very, very good at what they do. Dallas was at a good point in time. This is still Tony Romo, Dez years. I think that what you're looking at with this Cowboys team is a team, well, now obviously isn't getting DeMarcus Lawrence. They went 12-4 this year. Jason Garrett was being looked at as one of the best coaches in the NFL. Tony Romo's looking at a revival. DeMarco Murray is the best running back in the NFL, getting almost 400 carries a year. But they still have some holes to fill. I think more or less, though, it would be somewhere in the defensive side. Because just name value wise, there's really nobody other than Rolando McClain or Brandon Carr or Barry Church I'd really want on this team after this season. So I think that we're going to have to go with defensive here. And I'm just looking at some top defensive players available. I mean, you still got D Ford on the board. You got Stephon Tuitt. Shazier is still there if you want to go with that. Van Noy, Kirksey, Telvin Smith, Shaq Barrett. And then obviously in the cornerback spot, you have Bradley Roby, Malcolm Butler, Jason Verrett, HaHa Clinton-Dix, LaMarcus Joyner. I mean, there's some options. But just for the value of where it's at, and just something I always find best about the Cowboys is their linebacker position and just that front 7 type. So I'm going to get a guy who's kind of done both throughout his career, and I'm going to give him D Ford. D Ford definitely earned himself a big contract this last season. He played outside linebacker, edge rusher for the Chiefs, is arguably the reason they didn't make the Super Bowl last year because of that false start penalty or the offside penalty. But when you look at what he's done in his career, he's been nothing but production. He obviously did not have a good year last year. He wasn't really available to play too many of them. He did end up getting 6.5 sacks, though, when he played, which is good. But overall in his career, he's just been a solid player. He spent the first 2 years kind of behind on the depth chart. But when you got a team like this with Dallas where he would do the same thing that DeMarcus Lawrence did, because Marcus Lawrence wasn't a starter this year. He was able to do it after this year. So D Ford, I think, would be able to do that. I think he'd get some good snaps here and there. I think that he'd fit in pretty well to this defense, and I think they'd be happy with his production throughout his career.
I like that pick a lot, too. D Ford, solid player, solid pick. I like it all around. With the next pick here, you're looking at pick number 17, and with the 17th pick, the Ravens actually had the pick in this draft. And with their pick, they took
C.J. Mosley.
Yeah, they did take C.J. Mosley. That's right.
Alabama.
Obviously, he's already off the board. So with my pick here, I'm actually going to go ahead and bump up a player a little bit again. I'm actually going to go ahead and give him should I do it? Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give him Joel Bitonio.
Okay.
I think that's a solid pick. They had a decent O-line back in 2014. They obviously had the pieces there. They weren't the worst offensive line in the league. And I think when you add a player like Bitonio to that line, it just makes it so much better. And I feel like they could have done so much. run game had they added another offensive lineman to the mix.
Gotcha. And then the thing about Bitonio too is that he's a guy where you could really move him around, because right now their tackle position, they have Ricky Wagner, who's okay. Eugene Monroe really wasn't the best at the time. No one's thinking that he's going to take over for Osmole or Yanda, but Jeremy Zutta, he could take over at the center position, learn that pretty well.
Exactly.
It's a guy who could help him out a lot, because at this moment in time, it's pretty much a team that, is getting up there in age. Flacco, Forsett, both 29. Steve Smith's 35. I mean, they need to definitely help out their offensive side and give Flacco some more time to do what Flacco does best, and that's air the ball deep. So I'm not mad at the pick. I mean, Bitonio is one of the better talents in this draft and was down this low. I mean, easy pick for you.
You just can't pass it.
Yeah, and a lot of these things, like I said, it's moving people around. It might not be the best fit for his current position. He's not going to play left guard over Osmole, but, could end up doing more. Then we get to the New York Jets, who took Calvin Pryor this draft. Looked good the first year or two. Didn't look too good after that because he wasn't on the team. But, Pryor, he had some good ultimate team cards back in the day, I'll tell you that. But they're not going to take Calvin Pryor here. If that's shocking you, I'm sorry. But it's just not going to happen. Now, what they are going to do is help out, because, man, the Jets were the weirdest team for a while, man. Because, I mean, at this moment in time, 4-12, right? But then you look, a couple years back, they were one of the best teams. And then they had this weird time where we didn't know what they were doing. Well, at this moment in time, they just drafted Geno Smith, right? I'm not going to take a quarterback, even though I think Geno Smith was not the right answer. Geno Smith was 24 at the time. They had to they have to give him some time at least. That's the thing you can give him, is 24 years old. He has to at least have some time. Receiver-wise, they had Eric Decker, Percy Harvin, but, Jeremy Curley, not too much. Offensive line is pretty solid. They could help it out. Running back was Chris Ivory, who I think was an absolute beast at this moment in time. And then the defense. I mean, this was – I still remember this Jets defense playing so insane, out of their mind. I mean, having Muhammad Wilkerson, Damon Harrison, and Sheldon Richardson all in one line at the same time was insane. They added Quentin Coples and Demario Davis at the linebacker spot with Calvin Pace. I mean, this is a team that really did a lot, and, they thought Calvin Pryor was really going to add a lot to that. Now, did he do that? Yes, for a little bit, but not all the way. Basically, what I'm trying to say is they need to help out anywhere else other than the defensive line. And I think that a way you could do that is let's see. It's so hard because these corners, they're good, but they're not worth reaching over some other talented players, because there's just some players that are just so much better. I think what I'm going to do here is I think it's going to look a lot similar to what this year's draft was, and probably what next year's draft is, and it's going to be another wide receiver. They have Eric Decker, they have Percy Harvin, but, these Eric Decker was still going to be good. Percy Harvin was out of the league. Curley was going to be out of the league. So I am going to be taking a guy who I loved early in his career. Now he's more of just a reception guy, gets targeted an absolute assload of them now, and that's going to be Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson was a production machine. I mean, he still is, but when him and Hearns were running Jacksonville with Blake Bortles, it was some of the most fun football you could watch. Allen Robinson was just such a great receiver. I mean, the things he can do now is still amazing, but you don't get that spark of like what you get from Odell Beckham and Antonio Brown or Julio when they're on the field. But you used to get that from Allen Robinson. And I mean, I still remember him in that teal and black, the stupid ass helmets, just doing absolute numbers, man. I mean, his first year he had 500 yards. His second season, 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. This man was literally averaging 140 yards and a touchdown basically a game. That's how good of a receiver he was. And then the next year, 806, he ended up doing a pretty good year, but that was a little bit of a down year. And then the injury happened. And then obviously went to Chicago after that. And it's been a little different for him there. But getting that production out of him there, and maybe he doesn't end up getting that injury, but what you're going to get for a guy to a team that was looking to compete still. We see the Brandon Marshall pick next year. They're going to get a young receiver to at least complement Eric Decker on the outside. Hopefully give Geno Smith a weapon to make him your franchise quarterback if you are believing in him. So I take Allen Robinson here at pick 18.
I love that pick, Allen Robinson. I was hoping you wouldn't take the player that I wanted to take here for the Miami Dolphins. And thank goodness you didn't. With the Dolphins in 2014, they actually did draft Juwan James, offensive tackle out of Tennessee. Not
And
a
we're
good
going. No,
pick.
just kidding.
It
He's been all
wasn't.
right.
Yeah, he's been all right. Okay, let me clear the air. He's been all right. It hasn't been the best pick. However, there is a player that went just after him that I feel the Dolphins could have benefited from tremendously, and that is Brandon Cooks. I think
Okay.
the Miami Dolphins drafting Brandon Cooks here. They had drafted Tannehill 2 years before in 2012, so fresh quarterback. Obviously, he was decent. And I feel if you gave him a speedy receiver like Brandon Cooks, he could do so much more with the deep threat. Brandon Cooks obviously has been a journeyman throughout his NFL career, which is a real shame because he's had over 1,000 yards receiving the last four of the last 5 years. So it's hard to understand why a player who's so dominant, no matter where he goes, keeps getting traded. But I
It's
guess
one of
that's
those
just
unfortunate situations, man.
it really is. I mean, and then there obviously is the argument he only has played with the best quarterbacks of all time, but well, not best quarterbacks of all time, obviously. But
No,
great.
definitely. I think it is. I mean, you got Breeze, you got Brady. I mean, Deshaun Watson's been very good. He's
And
gonna
then
have
I
him
mean,
this year.
you have depending on how you view Goff. Goff's not one of the best, but he's
He's the
good.
number one overall pick, at least. You
Yeah,
know, at the very
yeah. I
least,
mean,
you gotta give him
he's
that.
a good quarterback. Like he's a decent quarterback that you would be okay throwing to you, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I
He's
mean, when you
had
look
good
at
quarterbacks, but I feel like his production, just himself as a receiver, he's so fast. He cuts so quick. He can stop on a dime. I feel like he's the person that makes the plays, not the quarterback throwing to him.
yeah, and when you look at it, I mean, Tannehill wasn't a bad quarterback. I think it was just, I mean, this season that they went into, he had 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 12 picks. I mean, that's a very good season, and he ran for
Yeah, very
311.
good season.
This is also when Lamar Miller had over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns as a 23-year-old. But then
And
you look at the receiving core, they have Brian Hartline and Mike Wallace, who Mike Wallace is still good at this point, but it was definitely getting, down there. And you can't count Jarvis because he's not there anymore. He's already been drafted here to the Steelers. So this is a guy who'd fill that Jarvis role pretty well and kind of do similar numbers to what Jarvis was doing.
mm-hmm. Ryan
So
Tannehill's, a great quarterback. I
I've
think he's
always
good.
liked him.
I
I've
think
always liked him.
I
I know
always
that he
knew.
wasn't
I
always liked.
always knew it wasn't the fit in Miami. I knew if he went to a team that would coach him right, that he was going to do great things, and I feel he proved it. I mean,
Yeah, and this is one of the more fun years for the next team that's up, and that is the New Orleans Saints. They were 7-9 and got second in their division. With it was a rough time for the division, but this is when they had Brandon Cooks here on their team. They ended up going with him with this pick, so he just ends up going up one pick. Receiver was a need for them at this moment in time. They had Marcus Colson kind of in his later years at 31. This is a time they also had Jimmy Graham kind of in his prime. Mark Ingram also kind of in his prime. Drew Brees never lost his prime. So this is a team that was able to do a lot with it. So I think that with a team like this, they're kind of just able to do best available here. And when you look at best available, what we got still on the board, well, offensive linemen, you still have guys like Jake Matthews on the board. Charles Leno is still there. Gabe Jackson is still there as well. Defensive side, Stephon Tuitt. We still got Kyle Van Noy, Telvin Smith, Shaq Barrett, HaHa Clinton Dix as well, LaMarcus Joyner. I think that safety is something I wouldn't really want to go to. So just looking at who would be the best fit here. They already had Terron Armstead, who we know is one of the best linemen in the league right now. So I don't think they would go there. I think that at this moment in time, it's not going to be the sexiest pick, but I'm gonna give him Gabe Jackson here. Gabe Jackson's held down the guard position for a long time in the NFL. Has never really been the absolute greatest at the guard position, but has never once hindered you on it. And when you give him a line like the New Orleans Saints, who has also been one of the better lines in the league for such a long time, he's going to take over for Ben Grubbs. They still have Jari Evans, who was a Pro Bowler that year. They have Terron Armstead, who's young. I mean, this line is very much aging. They need a new regime coming in. You're losing out on Brandon Cooks. I don't really want to reach on a receiver at this moment in time that they could get. They could get a Allen Hurns. They could get a Willie Snead or John Brown here, but I think, or even Sammy Watkins, but I think that right now, I think Gabe Jackson would just help him out too much. So I'm thinking Gabe Jackson, help out that offensive line a little bit, kind of transition him to a younger offensive line with him and Terron Armstead being the future.
yeah, solid. The 21st overall pick in the 2014 draft was actually the Green Bay Packers, and they did take Clinton Dix. When you look at all the players,
Nice.
yeah, nice. When you look at all the players that are left on the board, it's really hard to justify any specific player for any specific reason.
These are where the playoff teams are.
Yeah, I mean these are where the teams make the playoffs. And when you look at who the Green Bay Packers took, they took Clinton Dix. Obviously, he hasn't been the best, but he's had a few productive years, and I still feel like he could have been better than he ended up being. Does that make sense? Like,
No,
do you
I get
understand what I'm saying?
No, his potential is so high, and he really just became another safety who might have a job. It's just one of those things, and it's weird because he wasn't bad his first few years.
He really good. Wasn't, and I don't understand why he fell off like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, with this pick here, it's super hard on who I want to pick here. When you look at who's left on the board, there's a couple players that really catch my eye. Obviously, Clinton Dix is the pick here. I don't know, man. I don't know.
There's definitely options.
This is really where it starts to get interesting.
It is. I mean, like I said, these are all playoff teams. It's like what could elevate them to that next level?
What are you thinking, man? I'm having a tough time, man. What are you thinking? So don't say the pick of what you think, but who are some players that you think?
Well, when you look at the Packers at this moment in time, 12-4 is what they did. This isn't a team that was a scrub at any means. I mean, they have Eddie Lacy when he was relatively skinny. They have Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson. So obviously they don't have Adams anymore. But even without Adams, it's not even a big deal. He still have two of the best receivers at the position with Aaron Rodgers throwing it to him. Offensive line is looking the same as it did then, as it is now. They have Sit and they have Bakhtiari, Lindsley, Lang, Bulaga. Obviously, Lindsey went later in this draft in the 5th round, so you might have to jump up to get him to keep him there. But other than that, I mean, Clay Matthews there, Sam Shields, Morgan Burnett, Micah Hyde,
the Packers,
Mike Daniels. There's no weak spot in this team.
The Packers, the only position that the Packers tend to have a weakness in, but somehow Aaron Rodgers makes them look amazing, is their tight end position.
Yeah.
So I think with this pick here, after some long, hard consideration, I think with this pick, I'm actually going to go ahead and give him Eric Ebron here.
Okay.
I feel like Eric Ebron is a solid pick for the Packers. The Packers that they had, or the tight ends that they had in 2014 were, Richard Rodgers.
Yeah, Andrew Corliss.
Andrew Corliss too. So I feel like Eric Ebron, solid pick. Jock it.
Yeah, it's not bad. Having a guy like an Ebron who coming out of college was supposed to be that touchdown machine that we saw in Indianapolis, he could elevate that and get those Devontae Adams targets his first year. So
yeah, I feel like with Rodgers throwing to him, he could be that much better of a tight end. We've seen some flashes of him being really good, and I feel like if he would have had Rodgers throwing to him from the beginning of his career, he could have just been that much better.
So here I have the Cleveland Browns. Now the Cleveland Browns already have Zach Martin, which is a huge step up from anything they could have right now. So that's pretty good. But the team still sucks. I mean, defense is still nice. They have Dante Whitner there, Tayshaun Gibson at its prime, Buster Skrine and Joe Hayden, both young and doing very well for themselves. Carlos Dansby, Craig Robertson, Barkevius Mingo. They had a very good defense at this time. It's really the offense. I mean, you look at it, Brian Hoyer was their starting quarterback. Even though they took Johnny Football, they still had Hoyer start. They had Ray Agnew and Terrence West sharing snaps at running back. Miles Austin was their top receiver with Andrew Hawkins. I mean, this was a bad time to be a Browns fan. Not really like there's been a good time in most people's lifetimes, but this is where it's weird because they could go quarterback here like they did with Johnny Manziel, but they could go with a guy like a Derek Carr or maybe Teddy Bridgewater. Even a Blake Bortles. Running back position is big need where Devonta Freeman's on the board, Carlos Hyde's on the board. Then you even look at receivers. I mean, it seems like a reach, but I mean, there's guys like John Brown who might help out even just a small bit more than the other guys. I think I would take a guy like a Jake Matthews here or a Jawan James or somebody if I thought hey, like this is a spot where they need offensive line help. But in reality, I mean, they have Zach Martin to fill out that Batonio. They still have Thomas and Schwartz, who are very good. I don't think offensive line's that. I still don't see defensive line as anything. I mean, they could go for a defensive end and Stephon Tuitt here. But I don't know. The defense wasn't the problem at this moment in time. It's really between, do I take a quarterback here? Because the thing is that the problem with the quarterbacks in Cleveland at this moment in time was none of them could survive. They were not they didn't have the weapons to throw to, and they just weren't able to keep it going. So getting them a guy like a Derek Carr or a Teddy Bridgewater who have had shaky careers, how is that going to help them? I think I'm going running back here, and there's two running backs I'm between, and it's not the sexier pick, but I'm gonna give them a guy who they ended up signing later down the line, and I'm giving him Carlos Hyde at pick 22.
Oh wow!
I'm taking him over Devontae Freeman, because although Devontae Freeman has had some highs, he's had some lows. Carlos Hyde was an absolute stud on the Niners. Even when he went to Cleveland, he was a beast. Last year with the Texans, everyone thinks that he's got nothing in the tank. He goes out and drops 1,000 yards. He goes and signs another deal with the Seahawks. So I think that if he was given the production that the 49ers were giving him early in his career, I think he'd be able to blossom, especially with an offensive line that now has Zach Martin, Joe Thomas, Mitchell Schwartz. I mean, it's a team that can really do a lot. So I think getting him, he'd start right away and give that impact right away. I mean, this guy was very, very good for a while. I like his style of play as well. I think he would help out a lot for Cleveland. I think he'd help out a lot more than Devontae Freeman at this moment in time, just seeing where Devontae Freeman's career is gone. So yeah, I think in the long run, I'd rather have Carlos Hyde and how he plays over Devontae Freeman at this point, because Ray Agnew and Terrence West aren't going to get it done, and the receivers in the draft right now aren't enough to overtake Andrew Hawkins. So I'll take Carlos Hyde here.
Cool. I like that. The 23rd overall pick in the draft was actually occupied by the Kansas City Chiefs, and they actually did take Dee Ford. He's proven that he is a solid player. He obviously doesn't play for them anymore, but still, he has been a good player. He's off the board now. But when you look at the players that they had in 2014, their team wasn't necessarily the best.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the players that are still left on the board here, I'm actually going to go ahead and give them a receiver. I'm actually going to go ahead and give them John Brown.
Okay.
You look at their receivers in 2014, they didn't really have any great receivers. Like, yeah, they had Jeremy Maclin coming off of injury and not the same Jeremy Maclin as he was. I mean, he was never great, but he was a decent receiver. And then you look at the other players that they had, the other receivers they had. I mean, they had like Albert Wilson, Jason Avant, Chris Conley, Frankie Hammond. They didn't really have any great receivers, and I feel like if you put another speedy guy in there next to a decent Jeremy Maclin in John Brown, solid duo, and I think that would be a great duo to have.
I agree. It's just a matter of fact where we get to this point is like, do you want the longevity of a guy like a John Brown, or do you want that instant spark but then have to deal with the hard years of Sammy Watkins? John Brown is the pick, obviously. So then you get over to the next pick, which is the Bengals, who were a beast of a team at this point. Andy Dalton and AJ Green were both Pro Bowlers this year in their second seasons or third seasons, I think. Or it was, they hadn't been in the league too long. Bernard was one of the, it was a solid running back. They could upgrade, but I'm not going to do that. Jermaine Gresham was doing good things for them. Overall, this team was not doing bad. So when you look at what they could do, it's really just kind of help out. There's some older guys, and I think that one thing you can help out on is defensively, either the linebacker position or the cornerback position. And the reason I say that is because at cornerback this year, they had Leon Hall and Terrence Newman. That's a 36-year-old and a 30-year-old. And then you have at the linebacker spot, solid linebackers, but they're both Ray Maluga, Vincent Ray, and Emmanuel Lemur were all out of the league in a couple years. So you look at what's still on the board. You still have Kyle Van Noy. You still have Ryan Shazier. You still have Shaq Barrett. You still have Telvin Smith. What do I want to give them? I don't know yet. I'm trying to figure it out. Man, I'm going to be honest. And we talked about this and we joked about it, and that's the hard part.
Are you going to do it?
Ryan Shazier's off the board, man.
Really?
The reason why I'm doing it is because Ryan Shazier was arguably the best linebacker while healthy, right? Now that
Yeah.
he's on that division rival team, first of all, we don't know if he ends up getting
Besides
injured,
Mac.
right? Let's say he doesn't get injured in this alternate universe. It's possible. Even with the injury, I'd still take him here because they're getting those first, 4 years of him, and what that would do for this team that unfortunately gets to the playoffs and just would not be able to push through. I mean, I'm taking a guy in Shazier and transforming him or transforming Ray Maluga to him. Maluga was definitely a guy who was a great tackler, went in between the tackles and was able to disrupt plays. Shazier was able to outrun running backs and receivers. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. He was able to outrun offensive players while being 260 and 6'3". I mean, this guy was an absolute tank of a player. To add him to a team that also had George Iloka, who was a beast of a hitter at the time, Reggie Nelson, who was feared still at this moment in time, Geno Atkins and DeMonte Pecco and Carlos Dunlap on the D-line. To add him to that team with AJ Green, Andy Dalton on the other side, Mohamed Sanu in his prime, Andrew
Mohamed
Whitworth still there.
Sanu.
This team would propel itself. To where in this 4-year gap, they'd have a chance at the Super Bowl a lot better than they did at this point, and they were already a playoff team. So if I could get them over the hump to a Super Bowl in the first 4 years, and then he still has that same injury, I'll take it. I think that the impact for him is there. I'm giving him Shazier.
I like the pick, man. Man, you're throwing some solid picks out there. With the next pick here, the San Diego Chargers actually did have the 25th overall pick in the 2014 draft. They did go ahead and take Jason Verrett, cornerback out of TCU. That's actually not the player that I'm going to go ahead and give to the San Diego Chargers. Cornerback was a need for them. Obviously, it's because they took cornerback. However, Jason, I mean, he didn't really pan out the way that.
Yeah, the injuries caught up to him, man.
Yeah,
He had
injuries
2
caught
good
up
years.
to him. And it sucks to see a career derailed like that. But I'm actually going to go ahead and reach again for a player that I feel like could benefit their team tremendously for the pieces that they had around them. I'm actually going to go ahead and give them a running back. I'm actually going to go ahead and give them Devontae Freeman.
Okay.
Devontae Freeman had solid years, arguably was top 3 running back in the league at one point. Fantasy winner for everybody. And when you look at the running backs that they had in 2014, I mean, they had no one. I mean, they had Ryan Matthews and Danny Woodhead.
Yeah, Brandon Oliver, and it was a rotating handle, man.
It really was. And when you put a guy like Devontae Freeman, power runner, in there, I feel like he could have helped lift that offense to newer heights.
There was nothing you said that was incorrect in those statements, and I don't see anything wrong with that pick. Going into a division rival for me in the Philadelphia Eagles, there's a couple things that they could use at this point. They could use a quarterback. This is early Nick Foles. He wasn't doing too well. Obviously, Michael Vick was also back, I think, on the team at this time. But they have LaShawn McCoy, and you have to capitalize off LaShawn McCoy. A way to capitalize off of that is having a guy like Jeremy Maclin and Jordan Matthews, who combined went for 2,000 yards and 18 touchdowns that year. But their third guy was Riley Cooper, and we all know what Riley Cooper's done outside of football, and we also know what he's done inside of football, and neither of them have been too great, all right? But there's a guy on the board who was a top 5 pick in Sammy Watkins, and adding him to this team will make this offense a lot easier for any quarterback who they want to throw out there to do. So you get a guy like Sammy Watkins, who had great years his first couple years before the injuries happened. Add him to a guy with Jeremy Maclin and Jordan Matthews, who were beasting. And then LaShawn McCoy, who was one of the best running backs in football at this time. It'd make the offense a lot better. They still have Evan Mathis, Jason Peters, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson on the offensive line. I mean, this is a good offensive line as well. This whole offense would be transcendent for them. I like the pick here. I think that he would fit in pretty nicely.
Solid pick there. Great pick. Now it's my turn. 27th overall pick in the 2014 NFL Draft was actually taken by the Arizona Cardinals, my hometown team, your hometown team as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're a Giants fan, but you do live in the great state of Arizona.
Currently.
Currently. But with the 27th overall pick, the Arizona Cardinals actually did take Deion Buchanan, safety out of Washington State. Now, it's actually kind of funny because I remember watching this draft and I remembered the words coming out of my mouth that Deion Buchanan is going to be a Hall of Famer. Now,
yeah.
I clearly wasn't, at least so far. I obviously wasn't right. If I could, based off of just a personal draft pick, I would take Deion Buchanan here. But I'm actually going to go ahead and prepare the Cardinals for the future. They already did have a quarterback at this time, but I feel like they could have had another quarterback to sit behind a veteran in Carson Palmer. And I think taking Teddy Bridgewater with the 27th overall pick is solid.
I mean, it will help them. Obviously, Palmer is getting hurt at this time. And when you get a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, if you had Teddy Bridgewater in the playoffs over Drew Stanton, how much would that affect them? How much would that help them? Those are
exactly
questions that you would ask, And
Teddy B came in for the Saints last year after his injuries and went undefeated. I mean, he's minus his injury and minus getting knocked the fuck out.
Yeah.
He's an amazing player. He's always never gotten the respect he deserves, and I feel like if the Cardinals would have taken him here, he would have done wonders for us after Carson Palmer's sad departure.
Yeah, and I've already talked about this next team in their division and how horrible it was at this time, because the Saints were the number 2 team when they were 7-9, and the team that won that year, the division, was the 7-8-1 Carolina Panthers, who at this moment in time in the draft ended up taking Kelvin Benjamin here, who was a beast for a couple of years, but then just did not care about football after that. I mean, we've all seen the video of Josh Allen asking him, "Hey, like you want to do some routes?" And he's like, "Nope." It's like,
nope.
All right, but they had a team where it was a year or two away from really looking like a dynasty. That's how crazy it was. How can you add to that? Well, there's a bunch of different ways. They already had Kuechly and Davis. You don't really need to go there. They had Josh Norman, who was obviously a very good player at that moment in time. Defensive line was very good as well. It's really just a matter of, how could you add to the team? And I think that a way you add a team is just by going best available. Now, you look at some guys that are best available, they don't have Trey Turner anymore, and they need to fill that hole. So what I'm going to give them here is I'm going to go ahead and throw actually, I'm going to give him Jake Matthews. I'm going to give him Jake Matthews. I was thinking about giving him Duvernay Tardif from the Chiefs to fill that hole at the guard, but I think that Jake Matthews would help protect Cam Newton a little bit more than Byron Bell and Nate Chandler. So I think that just that consistency Jake Matthews has shown in his career, being picked 28 would be a lot better for his career compared to how high he was drafted, because people view him a lot harder than they need to. But this is the brink of the Panthers going on to be a beast. I think Jake Matthews would help that out a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. The next pick here, I have the 29th overall pick, of course. The New England Patriots had the 29th overall pick in the 2014 draft. And they drafted Dominic Easley, defensive tackle out of Florida. I mean, he was okay. He wasn't the best. He stayed on the team for wasn't it only 1, 2 years?
It was 1 or 2 years. It wasn't much.
1 or 2 years. He didn't stay on the team very long, so obviously defensive tackle was a need for them here. But I'm actually going to go ahead and give them a player that will I'm going to do it. With the 29th overall pick, I'm going to give the New England Patriots Jimmy Ward of the then San Francisco 49ers that drafted him. I'm going to give him longevity at the safety position. Obviously, the Patriots are known for stealing players late in the draft and stealing players in free agency. Jimmy Ward hasn't proven to be the best player in his career, but the longevity that he's had for the 49ers, I feel the Patriots will appreciate, and I feel like Jimmy Ward could thrive under the Bill Belichick system. I mean, anybody can thrive under the Bill Belichick system.
And you got to realize, too, is that players' impact, especially in the secondary, isn't just felt on defense, but special teams, too. So you get a guy like Jimmy Ward to add to your special teams, where the Patriots love using their draft picks on special teams for a good year to help them learn. That is a big thing. And he's not going to be on the 49ers, unfortunately. I wasn't going to take him on the 49ers. I think that there was something better that they could have done, because they obviously had Eric Reed, who was young at that point, and Antoine Bethea, who's only 30 at that point. But front seven was a little bit of a hole. They had a lot of older guys. This is where the 49ers were going in the right direction. They had Kaepernick, who was looking very good at this point. Frank Gore, who's still trugging along for everything at 31. Anquan Bolton still going over 1,000 yards at 34. They have Crabtree, Vernon Davis, Joe Staley, Iupati. This is a good team, man. This is a very good team. Now, there's a couple names I still have on the board that I like, but I think that the one that just far and above the other ones is Stephon Tuitt. What he's done for the Pittsburgh Steelers has just been impact, man. This guy has been one of the consistent players on the defensive line for so long. He kind of gets overshadowed by Cam Hayward, but he has just overwhelmingly been a reason why that Steelers defense has maintained its steel curtain reputation throughout the years. And I think that getting him to a team like the 49ers, who also have a very high defensive prowess in the NFL, adding him, taking out, you could take out Justin Smith at 35 years old or Ray McDonald at 30 years old. Both those are old aging guys. You add a guy like Stephon Tuitt, who's going to be young and produce for them for a while. Maybe they win the Super Bowl. Maybe they don't lose. There's so many different things that could change. I think that getting the 49ers, Stephon Tuitt here would be huge.
Dang. I was kind of hoping you wouldn't do that.
Well, you got one of the more fun teams here in the 2014 Broncos.
I know, the 2014 Broncos.
Who doesn't love the good old Peyton Manning days?
I know, right? With this pick, the Denver Broncos actually did go with cornerback here. They actually did take Bradley Roby. And Bradley Roby, I mean, he was not a terrible player by any means. I mean, he was a solid cornerback.
And
not Pro Bowl level, obviously, but he's been solid. I've done it a few times this draft, but honestly, I'm going to do it again just because it's the right thing to do. Bradley Roby is going to be picked in the redraft here. He's been solid for them. I mean, he did leave them to go to the Texans this season, or was it last? I think it was last season, right?
Last offseason, yeah.
Last season. If he would have stayed with the Broncos, I still feel like he would have been a solid player for them regardless. So Bradley Roby, redraft.
And the thing that's weird is that, I mean, a lot of teams like running three corners, and the Broncos were one of them at this point, with Vic Fangio being or not Vic Fangio. I'm sorry. It was Pat Shermer, I'm pretty sure was the coordinator at the time. But you have Talib and you have Harris, but then the ability for Roby to follow pretty much anyone else was second to none, and that's why they were able to win a Super Bowl. That's why they were able to do well. There's no really wrong pick for this team because anything could do it. So, hey, why change it? Because it worked for them, It got them a Super Bowl. Now we go to the very last pick of the draft, where Teddy Bridgewater was the final selection of the first round. The Vikings in 2014. Let's just go look at them real quick before we end up making our pick, because there's some players that are still on the board who, arguably shouldn't be, but there's a lot of players that were good. They went 7-9 this year.
They had Matt Castle and Christian Ponder in 2014.
Yeah. So the next season was when they had Matt Isiata as their running back. Teddy B was their quarterback. Greg Jennings, Cordell Patterson were the receivers. Tight ends were Rhett Ellison and Kyle Rudolph. This team definitely took a step in the wrong direction the next year. They had a good defense, but overall the offense was a big weak spot. So when you look at where the team could go, I think best players available on the board. LaMarcus Joyner is still there. Shaq Barrett, Telvin Smith, and Kyle Van Noy are also on the board. Those guys I feel like should definitely be drafted. Receiving wise, there's really not any other receiver I think should be in the first round. Running back wise, I don't really see another running back that deserves it quite as much. Crowell, maybe. He had a lot of good years. Unfortunately, his injury kind of hurt him, but his years in Cleveland were something to watch. But I think the Vikings, I mean, oh, man.
This is a tough pick, man. It was getting tough towards the end, but this is just the toughest.
Because the tough part is they took Teddy B, and a quarterback was definitely a need for them, and that's why they're stuck with what they have now in Kirk Cousins. They had to pay up to get a guy. But, their next pick isn't until let's see. Minnesota. I don't even know if they had a second round pick when I just skimmed through it. It doesn't look like they do unless it's late. They didn't even have a second round pick. Their next pick would be pick 72, where they took a D end who didn't work out. But obviously defensive end's not their hard thing. The hard part is that would a Telvin Smith help them out? Probably not. They already had Anthony Barr that they drafted. I guess they didn't get Anthony Barr, huh?
Mm-mm.
Man, it's really just a matter of, do they take a guy in Derek Carr where they fill up that quarterback position?
I genuinely think I know we're not supposed to give each other advice.
No, you're good.
That's the pick I would have taken. I would have taken Derek Carr just because of the players that are left on the board. You look at the quarterbacks that they had. They took quarterback here because obviously they needed it. Yeah. And in this redraft, we're assuming we're assuming that these are the players that are being taken. Like, this is how they're newly ranked, I guess. So in this imaginary world, Blake Bortles is not the first overall pick because we know he sucks, right?
Yeah,
So they're
exactly.
not going to take Blake Bortles. I think Carr is just the pick there in general.
I think that I'm going to go with talent overweighing opportunity, and Telvin Smith is going to be my final selection because this guy
Ooh.
is, he took a year off weirdly, but before that was one of the best linebackers in the game. Plays pretty similar to what Anthony Barr does. I think currently it's just a very weird spot for him to be in, but he has been one of the best linebackers in the NFL up until last season. It's when he took a year off from the Jags for whatever reason it was. We don't know if he's ever coming back to football, but those first 3 years were very good for him. His talent, I think, outweighs what it was. You look at what they could do. Maybe they still snag a Derek Carr or a Bortles later in the draft. Maybe they trade up for one. If not, maybe they run with Matt Castle and go into the next year. And maybe in the next redraft, they find another quarterback. There's different things that they could do there. But overall, I think that just a guy like Telvin Smith deserves to get in that first round, and he's going to sneak in at 32.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, and I mean, other than that, that's the whole redraft. Obviously, it's a long one to get through. 32 teams is 32 teams. There's no doubt about it. But I think teams would probably be a lot happier here than they were in the actual draft because, like I said, this is such a deep draft with a lot of talent. There's just a lot of things that they could do here. So, Texans hope you're happy with Aaron Donald, but then you even go down to, the Chiefs where they're getting a guy like John Brown to help them out. It's a lot of different stuff. So, Hunter, anything else you like to say about the draft?
No, I mean I have nothing else to say, man. Both of our selections for our designated, I feel like we did all of our squads well. We did all of our squads justice in helping them get a good player.
Of course. And then, of course, anybody watching, if you guys, first of all, if you stuck through this whole thing, congrats to you.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
we love you.
Yeah, so definitely appreciate you for sticking around. Let me know what you guys have for your redraft in the comment section below, or let me know what your team is and who you would rather have taken in your draft. If you guys did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like on it. If you didn't, just refresh the page, check it out again. Let me know what you think a second time. And without further ado, that's going to be for me and for Hunter, and we'll see you guys in the next redraft.